Okay, good evening and welcome everyone to this what we call Fireside Chat, but it's really a conversation with the founders of Thai Boston. As many of you know, we are celebrating 25th year of the founding of Thai. And as part of that, we want to celebrate the legacy of Thai Boston. And so we've been talking to all the founders throughout the year. We had a big gala and to celebrate them as well, but we've been talking to each one of them over the year so that we can learn a little bit more about them, their contribution earlier, the earlier life, their early involvement with Thai, and also what are they doing now, and just get to know them better and their perspective to make that happen. So it's really been very fun to kind of hear their stories. Today we are talking to Dr. Mahendra Patel, who was also one of the founders of Thai Boston, and I'm trying to learn more about Dr. Patel already in the discussion we had. So I'm looking forward to that. And moderating the session is Thomas Arul, who's on the board of Thai Boston and a resident blockchain guru and crypto guru for us. I lean on him whenever I need some help on that. So I think without further ado, I will turn it over to Thomas to have the conversation with Dr. Patel. And I think we'll go on for about 45 minutes, follow that through questions you guys have. Please put it in the chat. So we will convey those questions to Thomas. And at the end, I'll come back to talk about some of the future events as well. Thank you, Thomas. All yours.
Thank you, Yash. I'm really excited to talk to Mahendra Patel. I came and met Mahendra Patel during the Thai 25 video recording. I was super impressed with your background and what you said during the conversation. So I'm really looking forward to talking to you, hearing about your background, your very interesting background, and your growing up, your college days, then starting your work in Boston and what you've been doing. So let's start, Mahendra. What is Mahendra Patel and where did you start and how did you land up here?
Well, it's obviously a long story, but my parents were born in India, in Gujarat. They emigrated to East Africa, in particular Uganda, when there was a severe famine in India in the early 1930s.
Okay.
And I was born in Uganda.
Okay. So those days your dad went by a
boat,
steamer.
Steamer.
How long did it take to go to?
It used to take it was never fixed. It used to take between a week and 10 days.
Was your dad married at the time, or?
He went alone at first.
Okay.
He came back to India, and when he got married, he took his wife, my mother, with him.
Okay.
To Uganda.
And so the ship doesn't go to Uganda, right?
It goes to Mombasa.
Okay.
Which is in Kenya.
Kenya, yes.
There was just recently built a railway between Kenya and Uganda by the British government, who were fighting a war in the First World War.
Yeah.
With Germany and Italy.
Okay.
So there were portions of East Africa that were occupied by Germany and Italy. But in order to move the British troops quickly, a railway was built by having a lot of Indians who knew how to build railways.
Okay.
To go to East Africa, build the railway, and then, of course, a lot of people decided this is a country of many opportunities, very fertile place.
Yeah.
And so instead of farming in India, there was a lot of famine
during the time.
Let's do it in East Africa.
Okay.
And so my parents.
So how did he go from Mombasa to Uganda? There was no railways at that time, no?
No, and in fact, you had to walk.
How many days was the walk?
Would take a month.
Month? So he landed in Uganda, then Mombasa, then walked for a month.
Right,
Okay,
right.
that's good. So then how did he end up in England?
of course, went to the early primary and secondary school in Uganda, in particular Kampala. But then my parents decided that I was doing sufficiently well that they sent me to England. So first I went to a place called Portsmouth College of Technology, which is now called Portsmouth University, to do A levels.
Okay.
And then when I got three good A levels at the A plus, I applied to several universities in England to do electrical engineering, and I was accepted at a few of them, and I decided I wanted to go to Manchester, which was well known for engineering.
What year was this?
This was 1958.
Okay.
Very early.
Okay.
I was there for 3 years. I got a first class degree in electrical engineering, and that gave me the ability to apply to Cambridge.
Okay.
Cambridge has a very high entrance requirement.
Absolutely.
So I was accepted at Cambridge to do a PhD in electrical engineering. And I spent 3 more years there. Now, at the end of the 3 more years, I was offered places in England to teach, but I decided that since I had come from East Africa, that it was my duty to go back to East Africa and teach at the University of East Africa, which at the time had a branch in Nairobi for engineering.
Okay.
So I taught engineering, electrical engineering for 2 years at University of East Africa in Nairobi. I also met my wife, who was a student at the university there. And I did marry her while she was still a student. And then at the end of 2 years, I asked if I could do some further research at the university, and they said no. So I decided to leave again and join a research company called English Electric.
Where was that?
In Stafford, in England.
England, okay.
In England. So we went back to England. I was there for a year or so, and then joined English Electric Computers Limited.
Okay. What year was that? What year was that?
That was in 68.
Okay.
And then English Electric plus 7 other companies merged to become International Computers Limited, backed by the government. And so I became part of ICL. At ICL, they decided that the new company, which was made up of 8 different companies in Britain, needed a new computer series. And I was chosen to actually devise the new architecture for a new range of computer systems, which I did. So I wrote the architecture for ICL Series 2900.
So what was the programming language? Was it purely microprocessor based?
Well, at the time, there was no semiconductor single chips.
Yeah.
It was chips that made up gates.
Okay.
So the first computer that was at the time made was made out of lots of gates made on small chips.
Okay. There was no display either, or
there was displays, but the processor,
the gates on and off.
Right.
Okay.
So I designed the first computer there for ICL. Then I designed the operating system that goes on top to manage the processor and the peripherals. Then I designed the output of the compilers so that they could all interact with one another. When that was done, that turned out to be fairly successful range of computers to be sold by ICL in Britain and in Europe,
Okay.
because now they had branches in Europe. At which point I asked the question, what would I be offered at ICL other than the chief technical officer? Could I become a director of one of the branches?
Yeah.
And I was told no.
Oh, wow. It's their loss then.
So I contacted a person here at Digital who I used to invite when I used to chair the conferences in Europe for computers. And he asked me if I would come and join him here in Boston at Digital Equipment Corporation. And I said, sure, I would do that. So we tried getting a visa from the embassy to get to United States. And we were put in a line. And so I informed Bill Johnson here that this was going to take too long and it wasn't going to work out. So he says, well, let me see what I can do. So he talked to Ted Kennedy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
To see if my visa could be accelerated. It turned out Ted said no.
Really? Wow.
Ted said no.
We should talk to Ramesh about it.
So the managing director of ICL, who was also leaving at the time, was starting a company in Chicago.
Okay.
So he said, let me see what I can do to get you to come to my company called AB Dick in Chicago. And I said, well, try it. So he went to a senator of Illinois, Percy, and said, can we accelerate this visa? And he said, sure.
Yeah.
So we got a visa within 3 months.
Yeah.
And we actually went to Chicago, worked for this company called AB Dick in Chicago. But I said, I'll commit for 2 years. Then we'll see what happens. Because I still wanted to go to digital.
Yeah.
Because digital was very well known for having engineers a good say in the business.
Yeah.
So at the end of the 2 years, when Bill Johnson called me, because I told him 2 years, he said, come over.
Okay.
So we moved to Boston. Joined Digital.
Which year was that?
That was 1982.
Okay. And so how's your family? Who do you have in your family? People who like to know.
My wife was a student at University of East Africa. She got a degree from London University. Yeah. We came over to England. Both my children, a daughter and a son, were born in England.
Yep.
So they are not only British citizens, but also US citizens. Yeah. My daughter is a cardiothoracic surgeon in Cincinnati. And my son is a venture capitalist in Boston. Okay. So they live very close to MGH, Mass General, where my daughter-in-law, his wife, works at MGH.
Yeah. So one of the things when I spoke to you last time, I had an interesting tidbit that while you're studying in Cambridge, you know Stephen Hawking. He's a good friend of you, and you're a lifelong friend. Yes. That really got me excited because I've read a lot of his book. I'm a big fan of him.
Right. So
that I think a lot of people are interested in knowing your friendship with Stephen and your thoughts about him and the work he has done and his family.
I was at Cambridge in 1961. He came to Cambridge from Oxford in 1962. and we were both at Trinity Hall College. And we were both assigned rooms at a graduate house at number 1 Adams Road. Number 1 Adams Road is connected to the college, to Trinity Hall, by a lane which passes by the library. So for going to dinner to the college, we would walk along this lane. At the end of the lane is a very nice bridge, a curved bridge which goes across River Cam.
Yeah.
River Cam is the back of all the colleges
Yeah.
in Cambridge. So we were going up the bridge when I said to Stephen, you're dragging your right foot. He says, no. So I said, okay, all right. So I didn't say anything more. 2 weeks later, the same thing happened. I said, Stephen, you're dragging your right foot. He says, no. So I left it alone. At the end of that first term in 62, he goes home to St. Albans, which is where his parents had a home, and he falls down the stairs.
Oh.
62, December.
Yeah.
His father is also a well-known physician in Britain. And so he takes him to London for examination and diagnosis. He's there for several weeks. And just when he's about to leave, the doctor tells him, you've got 2 years.
Yeah.
Put your business in order. So he comes back to Cambridge. I saw him in January, and he was playing loud Wagner music because I was in room number 1, he was in room number 3. And I could hear it. So I went in to talk to him. I said, Stephen, what's going on? He says, well, I've been given 2 years.
Wow.
So I'm not going to do my PhD.
Oh.
So I said, Stephen, you can't do that. Something different will happen. You should continue to do a PhD. He wasn't convinced. But at the end of that term in 63, in spring, Easter time, he goes home again to St. Albans, to his parents' place. And his parents have invited his friends for a reception. Amongst the reception friends is one of their daughters, turned out to be Jane.
Yep.
He meets Jane. A term later, he is well in friendship with Jane.
Yep.
In fact, Jane, at the end of 63, goes up to Stephen, even though she knew that he was having now difficulties with walking and speaking. She said to him, Stephen, I'm going to marry you.
Wow.
Now, that's a strong woman.
A strong woman, yeah.
She knew what was happening.
Yeah.
But she told him she was going to marry him.
Yeah.
Her parents, because she was too young, said, no, not until you finished your college. So they waited.
Yeah.
I was by now in East Africa, in Nairobi.
Yeah.
I got married in October of 64. 65. He got married in July of 65.
Yeah.
Finished his PhD. And in my view, this beautiful young woman saved his life.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I watched the movie.
Yeah.
And from falling the stairs, and I can recollect all that stuff. And she's a strong woman, and I think she made a lot of impact. And from 68, he lived up to 2018.
Yes.
And
yes.
He's come to Boston numerous times. He spoke to MIT. And whenever he comes to Boston or MIT, he comes and sees you.
Right.
The last step should have been 2018. He gave a speech in
Yes.
MIT.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you meet him at that time? Or?
Yes, I did. I
Okay.
did. Whenever he came to Boston, he always came for lunch to our place here.
Okay. He must have been surrounded by a lot of people to help him, because it was not easy to
yes.
to
There were 9 people
Oh,
who
just to help
traveled with him.
to help.
3 sessions,
Mm.
8 hours each,
Mm.
with 3 people to look after him
Mm.
during that session.
Mm.
A nurse and someone who could carry him,
Mm.
and someone who can act on his behalf to take the telephone calls and conversations.
Yeah.
So I would call up his personal assistant and say, when can you come for lunch? And he would decide, and all 9 of them
Oh.
would come with him
To this house?
to this house.
Oh, okay, nice.
Uh,
Yeah, people don't realize I'm doing this interview from your house.
Right.
So,
yeah,
okay.
so he's been here several times.
Oh, okay.
Um,
And one thing is that, though you had physical ailment, his mind was sharp and he couldn't communicate. He was communicating through those computers,
right.
and all you have written is so much valuable. That says the mind is a terrible thing to waste, and
Right.
a lot of people are wasting their mind without doing much. So,
He did tell me once that he had the perfect body for his mind.
oh wow, why is that? Because the
Be-
people have thought that is a limiting factor because you
Right.
can do so much.
Right.
But since he can't do a lot of the outdoor activities, he's confined to his chair.
He thought about imagery, about physics.
Okay.
He thought in terms of images that would describe what he was trying to write the equations for.
Oh wow.
And so he believed that given his immobility in the body, he was able to sit there and construct the physics of the universe. And so he wrote, in my personal knowledge directly, he would write the entire physics paper that would be published later with equations in his mind.
Wow, in his
In
mind.
his mind.
Without even writing.
No writing.
Oh wow.
In his mind. And this would be a 20-page article that would be written in a physics journal. And he would then have one of his graduate students actually create the script based on what he had worked out as the physics of the universe. And so one of the first discussions he and I had was about black holes.
Oh wow.
And he just by chance just said to me, well, if we can devise equations that go forward in time from where we are as to what will happen in the future based on Einstein's equations, why can't I reverse the time, make t the minus t, and we'll go backwards and find out where we came from.
Oh wow. Okay.
And that's what he eventually made his main research on, and devised the equations that would describe the universe and its starting point with the Big Bang.
Now you should have been excited by the Web3 telescope and the images that is coming from the
He
sun.
would have been.
Yeah,
Yes,
he
would have been.
Yeah.
Very excited.
And,
Yes.
unfortunately, he passed away in 2018, and you had a chance to go to his funeral. And
Yes, he died in March of 2008, and I was invited to the memorial service at the Abbey in London.
Okay.
And I went and I attended, and a lot of physicists from all around the world came to Westminster Abbey to attend the memorial.
Especially when you study in Cambridge, if you throw a stone, you're going to hit a physicist.
Yes.
Or you walk an alley, you're going to meet some physicists.
That's definitely
so. Did you meet
true.
some interesting people in your days in Cambridge, apart from Stephen Hawking?
Well, by accident only. I was walking along the main street of Cambridge at one time, and a elderly gentleman stops me and says, "Where do you come from?" And I said, "Uganda." So after a little conversation, he said, "I am Paul Dirac. Paul Dirac is a uh, Nobel laureate
Laureate, yeah.
who has done some innovative work in astrophysics
Astrophysics.
and physicists.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's apparently quite normal in Cambridge,
Yeah.
because Cambridge has had as many as 117 Nobel laureates.
Fantastic.
Uh,
And from, once you joined digital, I know digital evolved into Compaq, and Compaq was acquired by HP, and it's still running. And those days, digital was the company to look for these custom computers. And if I'm not mistaken, you were helpful in creating the center in India, where the team was 5 people and it grew to almost 135,000. Or what was that story?
well, at one time in 1982, I was invited to attend the board meeting of Digital here, headquarters here in Maynard, by Ken Olson. Uh, so I went to the board meeting, and one of the directors um, asked me if I could help with the setting up of digital in India, because prior to that, digital had a partner in India called Hinditron.
Yeah.
And Hinditron would be the selling arm of digital products made by digital. But this director, Vernon, basically said to me, can we set up a company in India? And I said, sure, I can try. And we set up first just a hardware company to manufacture what we were already manufacturing here in United States. Um, and we did that in Bangalore. And subsequent to that, it became clear to me that the real talent that was available in India was about programming.
Yeah.
And so I started transferring particular groups of people who were responsible for particular pieces of software to India to develop and maintain, and it would be sold worldwide. Um, and so I started with a group of about just 5 engineers in Bangalore. But by the time I left in year 2000, that software company called Digital Software in India had grown to 115,000 software engineers. So they were actually dealing with major pieces of software that were developed, including VMS and Unix and so on, in India, and it trained the first set of programmers in India in the products that would be sold worldwide.
Absolutely. Now, I was working after my undergraduate in Bangalore in a company called Sonata, and we were the distributors of Microsoft products, and digital was a big account, and everyone used to envy that account because they bought tons of. That's the only company that bought legal software in Bangalore at the time, and we used to look at the account, and that's very interesting. So now this was TIE's 25th year, and you're one of the founders. And we had the 25-year gala, and it's good to meet all the founders. And so, what was the experience that when 25 years back, when you all joined together and created TIE Boston? What's your memories from there, and how was anything you want to share from that?
Yeah, it's interesting because at the time there was no particular group that had a common sense of what needed to be done to form a community. Each one individually was trying to do the best that they could, but there were no pioneers who might be considered role models who could help the others. And so the first set of discussions that occurred were really about forming just a group that would begin to talk about how to help newcomers become ventures into new enterprises. Um, so, so that set of discussions led to discussions about forming TIE. And I was very happy to participate in so doing, um, knowing though that in the end, we, the middle-aged guys, should give the reins to the younger generation. I've always acted at those discussions in terms of how are we going to create a body that's taken over by the youngsters, not something that's permanent for the oldies. And um, that did become a part of the DNA of Thai, which was let's bring in the young people who we admired a lot in terms of taking risk in forming the new enterprises. And that I'm always been glad, even now, I admire people like you, youngsters, who have taken the lead to take it further than um, the original formation.
Yeah, we all could do that at some time because we had mentors,
Right.
other people from Thai, kind of guiding us through different directions, because it's not easy to start a business and run a business and
Right.
sustain it in the long run. So,
Right.
So I see you reading a lot of books. So what are the books you're reading now?
I love physics.
Okay.
So one of the books I've been reading is by Brian Greene, which is about the universe and its fabric. Fabric being space and time.
Okay.
Because the two, it turns out, are completely related to one another. They are not independent of one another, which is what our human experiences tell us, that space is something different from time is. But in reality, Einstein showed that in fact, space and time are one related variable in the fabric of the universe. So I like reading books that have physics as its fundamentals.
Okay.
I
think with the Web3 and the pictures coming and the expanding universe, nothing has changed from the instance theory. Everything is
correct.
Yeah.
So the interesting part of it is that in 1964 and 5, while I was still at Cambridge, there was a great debate going on about the nature of the universe. And there were two camps.
Yeah.
In fact, two different professors at Cambridge. One was called a steady state theory, and the other one was called the Big Bang.
Big Bang expanding.
And not enough was known to actually say which one was correct.
Yeah.
In 1960s, we didn't know that in fact there was a backwards looking Big Bang and a beginning of time at the time. Because one group of physicists basically said steady state is the nature of the universe. And I took part in many of those.
Which side were you on?
I was on the Big Bang side.
Luckily on the correct side.
So was Stephen, by the way.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And he had much more, I would say, deeper knowledge than I did. But he went on to write the thesis about the Big Bang and its origin, and eventually the extraction of theory into Big Bang. And that became his lifelong endeavor
Yep.
to write about the Big Bang and what was eventually called Hawking radiation,
Yep.
which determines that in fact there is something that escapes
Yep.
from the black hole.
Yep. And talking about technology, so what's your thoughts on artificial intelligence? So I know that sometimes it's helping a lot of companies, it's going to help the human race, but there's also the other side where automated killing machines and sentience taking over. And I don't know whether you saw that Google had this Lambda speech chat, and someone said it's sentient. And Microsoft had this Twitter bot, which was analyzing all the data, and it became a racist within a day. So, what's your thoughts on AI and where it's going to go?
I was actually put in charge by Ken Olson for the first team of AI in digital in 1984.
Yeah.
But my view is that the word AI is used too loosely to describe phenomena that has been utilized successfully in everyday life. But I call them learning systems as opposed to AI or artificial systems, intelligence systems, because the learning systems actually have feedback in it to correct what is necessary for it to succeed more often in projecting what it's trying to tell you. An example would be radiographs of human beings,
MRI,
X-rays, MRI, and so on.
Yeah.
AI often is used in open loop systems when there is no feedback, in which case more data does create a better result, but never good enough to be able to rely on or explain how it came about doing that analysis.
Yeah.
And that is a very difficult portion of AI for anyone to adopt and make it a respected form of product. The learning systems are perfectly good enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I drive a self-driving car, and it takes over the highway. It knows what to do, what not to do. Whereas Microsoft's Twitter, no one told that you can't be, these things are racist and you should not be copying them.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. So that's open system is closed system.
Right. Right.
So yeah, that's interesting. And also, and I'm a blockchain fan, and a couple of companies on the blockchain side. So what's your, people call it a fad, or people call it not going to scale, because it's a public data which is against it. And Web3 is coming, where you're going to have decentralized payment, decentralized. People are going to take control of your data. So they want to move from the bigger companies in Web2 and Microsoft, Google, and Facebook all use your data and they make money. But people are earning towards a decentralized world where you take control of your data, you get paid for your work, and that's where blockchain is helpful, NFTs and stuff. So what's your take on that?
Well, blockchain is a wonderful technology. In fact, digital used to sell products that were called fault-tolerant systems, which were located at two separate locations, but working on the same thing, so that even if one failed, the other one could carry on doing what it was. That's basically a replication of the computing and the data storage capabilities at multiple locations. And nowadays it would be called a distributed data system. That is a wonderful technology to be able to utilize in creating even more secure systems in particular industries. what I mean by that is that you want the ability of people who have permission to access it to be able to access it, but not necessarily modify it.
Yeah.
Meaning you can add to the database as it exists, but not be able to change records that have already been written.
Yeah, that's a
That-
fundamental premise
That's a
of blockchain.
very fundamental
Yeah.
provision
Yeah,
of databases. Now, what are the industries where that would make real sense? It would make real sense in banking,
Yeah.
in stock transactions, in medical records.
Yeah.
You don't want any medical records to be changed
exactly.
after it's been written.
Yeah,
Um, there are obviously places where public records have to be corrected.
absolutely.
And,
And that's why there's a lot of these land deeds and stuff, people don't have access to the data
right,
once it's recorded.
right,
And if it's in paper, people could alter it, or a lot of the governments, a lot of people, there's a lot of corrupt, and the power is it's very powerful, but it's very hard to implement because
right.
finally, though how good the technology is, you have human beings involved in
Involved in that.
doing some stuff, and if they
Right.
do it rightly, and
Right.
so that's why a lot of still early days, and hopefully we can see a lot of things coming out.
I think given time,
Yeah.
the right technology will match the right requirement.
Yeah.
And where records have to be open to the entire public, will have to have a different set of characteristics
Yeah.
than records which have to be private, cannot be changed by anyone other than those who are permitted to change it.
So one thing, Mahendra Patel, because you're a doctor too, but you don't call yourself doctor everywhere. If I even do Google search on you, not many people know all the stuff you did. Why is that? Traditionally, people, they do X, they blow it as X square or X cube, but there's hardly things written about you or what you have done. Why is that? It's a hidden secret, or
No, it's not a secret, but it is a characteristic of my nature, which is I was a very shy boy when I was growing up, but I'm also fairly private.
and suppose you don't have a Facebook account.
Very true, very true. I learned from good role models. I would say my first good role model was my father, a very humble person, didn't want to interfere in other people's business, ready to help everyone who wanted to, or he wanted to come and talk to him, perfectly okay. And then subsequently, I came across people who were very forceful in what they wanted to say or do, particularly at ICL. And I reacted against it. And then I came to digital, and I got to know Ken Olson well. And I learned from him the humility of being able to talk to everyone, but not force everyone into one's ideas. I'll give you a very simple story about Ken Olson, just to show the humanity that was involved there. In 1987, my wife was diagnosed with cancer, lymphocytic cancer. I had to take her to a hospital in Boston every morning for chemotherapy. So I did that for a week. And then I realized that I wasn't giving my 100% to digital based on what I was being paid and what I was expected to do. So I went to Ken Olson and I said, listen, Ken, can I work half the time that I'm normally working at digital, and you give me half the salary? I'd be quite happy to take half the salary. I will make up for it in the evenings, because I'll work in the evenings as well. But if we could have an arrangement whereby I could work half the time, take my wife to the hospital in Boston every morning. He says, we don't do that to our friends. My driver will take her to the hospital every morning and bring her back. But I expect you to be here every morning.
Yeah, that's so nice of him. Yeah.
And he did that, his driver, for 2.5 years.
Wow.
He would take my wife to Boston for her treatment for chemotherapy.
Wow. So
that shows what a CEO can do in leadership roles, even nowadays.
Absolutely.
And that becomes a role model for a lot of younger people.
Absolutely.
If done correctly.
Yeah. So I think thanks again. It was a wonderful discussion. I wish we had hours to talk, but definitely I'm going to come and take you up for a wine and talk more, because there's still a lot of stories. We just on the tip of the iceberg, but I want to take some questions with the audience questions.
Sure, so, I'd be happy to do that.
So I think question is, yours was a great story of a migration from Africa to UK to the USA. What advice would you give to young entrepreneurs in Thai Boston to become successful?
My view is that young people now who have had a diaspora from India to other countries and to the United States have one very interesting possibility, which, if exercised correctly, would differentiate that community from all others to a great and significant degree. And I call that honesty and integrity. This is something that I think the Indian community would find it fairly easy to do, in addition to, of course, many other things. But that is a characteristic, when applied correctly in all its dimensions, including business, would create a sense of being reliable by the remainder of the community. That has a value far beyond the ability to just make money or be successful at a company that you want to do.
Absolutely.
That company will survive a long time, given its dimensions of honesty and integrity. I found that in digital to be a great asset when I went overseas to talk to all the branches of digital all over the world. That was what made it different.
So, you've seen the past 25 years of Thai. The other question is, what do you like to see the next 25 years, especially Thai Boston doing?
Well, personally, as I said before, I think younger people should be taking a much greater role, because they're the ones who are going to gain the most from taking a positive, active role in Thai and determining what changes should be made, if any, by working with the people who have already been successful and learning lessons from that, and not worry about success coming purely from the monetary side. I think the personal creation of a being who is reliable, who is honest, who has integrity to deal with could be a great thing to learn from the current members of TIE.
Okay, so that question I had is, so when we started 25 years back, did you see the TIE as Boston research live up to the expectations or beyond, or any shortcomings which we need to know and take care of?
Oh no, I always thought that if the participation came and the right people were there at the beginning, it would be a very successful organization, because the integrity it would have obtained would prompt the younger people to join and become a party to it. So I had no doubts right from the beginning. I have no reservations at present about any shortcomings associated with it.
Okay. So one other thing is that I took up a volunteer to take the video of all the founders, and that was a fantastic experience because I heard about a lot of the founders, but I never got to sit with them and listen to the story. Went to the house. Each and every founder was amazing. They had a great story behind the stuff, and also what they contributed to TIE and to the Boston and the greater Indian community was phenomenal. And you just realize when you spend time with them. So thank you very much, Dr. Mahendra Patel, because I always want to call you doctor, but you don't have your doctor degree anywhere. But it was a fantastic time. I hope everyone enjoyed learning your words of wisdom, your unique experience coming across multiple countries back here, and your contribution to Boston as well as US as well as to the greater society was fantastic. Thank you very much. I will let
My pleasure.
Yash take over. And
pretty intense. I was like, it was good job, Thomas and Mahendra bhai. Thank you very much for taking the time. It's so nice, and like Thomas said, you could go on for hours and digging in more to learn more about it. I particularly resonated with your advice on honesty and integrity. It matters. That's what it.
And Yash, one thing I would recommend is you should write a book. Because I think there's a lot of stories, especially from the early days. We should write a book, and we can make a Netflix movie out of it. So.
Well, just short movies are fun, right? Whatever. But I think it's always good. It's always. I honestly believe everybody has a story to tell. Everybody, whatever it is, it could be a successful story, and people somehow it didn't make it happen. There's a lot to learn from there as well. But again, thank you for taking the time and talking to us for all you've done for TIE. Thank you for that. I would highlight that we have just a quick note. We have a big our TIE annual gala we have a set a date for it. That's on December 2nd. You will hear more about it.
Yeah.
We have locked down the venue. It is going to be at the Back Bay Sheraton.
Yeah.
A really nice ballroom that they have, a very beautiful event space, and we hope to put up a really solid event. So if it's on your calendar, mark it on December 2nd. Okay, more details to follow. There's also a TIE Global Summit taking in Hyderabad in December 11th to 14th. Another, if anybody's in India and want to join in, should join in for that event. It's open to everybody to attend and sign up. And then we're looking to do a TIECon in April next year. So those are some of the big events. And we continue to do that. And we continue to do for charter members who are on this session. We continue to do charter member socials and networking events. We already have something coming up in October 15th at Santana's house, which is on an art theme, and maybe some other one coming up with new themes coming soon. So anyway, thank you all for joining. Appreciate it. Appreciate Thomas and Mahendra bhai. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.